20th letter of the Sign of the Cross in the 19th century. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Denise Nordell. The Sign of the Cross in the 19th century by Jean Gaume. Letter 20. 20th letter. The Sign of the Cross is a guide that conducts us. Necessity of a guide. State of man here below. The Sign of the Cross conducts man to his end by remembrance and by imitation. Remembrance which it recalls. General remembrance. Particular remembrance. Particular imitation. December 16th. Ennobled, instructed, enriched, protected by the Sign of the Cross, what remains for man to attain happily the end of his pilgrimage? It remains for him to find a sure guide to conduct him. Like the Archangel Raphael sent to accompany the young Tobias in his distant voyage, the Sign of the Cross presents itself and offers to render to all, to you as well as me, dear friend, the same service. Such is the last point of view under which we shall consider this adorable sign. Travelers toward heaven, the Sign of the Cross is a guide that conducts us. It is midnight. The thunder rolls on all sides, the rain falls in torrents, ferocious beasts issuing from their dens roar and run in every direction. Objects can be distinguished only by the glare of the lightning. You are alone in the midst of your black forest, such as it was in the time of Caesar, immense, horrible, without road, path, or habitation, a vast haunt of those great bears of Germany, the sight of which affrighted the Romans even on the inaccessible steps of the Colosseum. What shall become of you? Do you not feel the necessity of a charitable guide who, appearing suddenly beside you, shall reassure you by his presence, and take you by the hand to conduct you safe and sound into the midst of your family? Feeble image of reality, the Black Forest is the world, the tempest, with its darkness, its thunders, dangers, and terrors, is life. Where am I? Whither am I going? What road shall I take? Such are the questions addressed to himself by the terrified man in the midst of this night so full of anguish. The answer is not long delayed. It is whole and entire in the Sign of the Cross. Again, the Church, full of solicitude, teaches him to make it even from his cradle. Explained by the voice of his mother, this eloquent sign dissipates all darkness, illuminates the way, and directs through life. Having come from God, it says to man, you are returning to God. Image of God, who is love, you must return to him by love. Love includes remembrance and imitation. To think of God, to imitate God, this is for you the way, the truth, and the life. Understand me, and you shall without difficulty fulfill the two fundamental laws of your existence. Nothing is more true than this language of the divine guide. Some details will suffice to demonstrate this. Remembrance. They say in France, as in Germany, as everywhere today, as 4,000 years ago, that remembrance is the pulse of friendship. As long as the pulse beats, life exists. It is extinct when the pulse ceases to beat. In like manner, as long as the remembrance of the beloved object subsists, affection continues. It languishes when remembrance grows faint. It dies when it disappears. All this, as you know, is elementary. We are so fully convinced that remembrance is a sign, a cause, a condition of human affection, that friends never fail when parting to say, "Do not forget me, I will never forget you," and to give tokens which, notwithstanding their absence, may preserve their mutual remembrance. It is with the love of God as with human friendships. Remembrance is its sign, its soul, its life. The remembrance of God being the first law of our being, it behooved infinite wisdom to give us a means of accomplishing it. The law being universal, this means should be universal. The law being for all, rich and poor, learned and ignorant, men of leisure and men of labor, the means should be accessible to all. The law being fundamental, the means should be very powerful. I have told you, dear Frederick, that the law of remembrance is a fundamental law of humanity. The justification of these words will show you in a new light the importance of the Sign of the Cross. What the sun is in the physical world, God is in every respect, and still more in the moral world. Suppose that instead of continuing to shed on the world his torrents of light and heat, the sun is suddenly extinguished. Imagine what becomes of nature. At the same instant, vegetation is stopped, the rivers and seas become plains of ice, and the earth as hard as a rock. All the malicious animals, which light in chains in the depth of the forests, issue from their caverns, and, by terrific howlings, call one another to the slaughter. Trouble and terror seize upon man. Everywhere reign confusion, despair, death. A few days suffice to bring the world back to chaos. Let God, the necessary sun of intelligences, disappear, moral life immediately becomes extinct. All ideas of good and evil are effaced. Truth and error, justice and injustice, are confounded in the right of the strongest. In the midst of such thick darkness, all the hideous cupidities, all the sanguinary instincts slumbering in the heart of man are aroused, let loose, and without fear as without remorse, contend for the mutilated fragments of fortunes, cities, and empires. War is everywhere, the war of all against all, which makes the world a vast den of thieves and assassins. This spectacle the eye of man has never seen, any more than he has seen the universe without the planet which vivifies it. But what he has seen is a world on which, like the sun veiled with thick clouds, the idea of God casts only an uncertain glimmer. Thence have proceeded endless gropings, foolish and immoral systems, gross and cruel superstitions, passions instead of laws, crimes instead of virtues, materialism at the base, despotism at the summit, egotism everywhere, with the combats of the gladiators and the banquets of human flesh. Less complete than among the pagans, the forgetfulness of God produced, however, among the Jews, analogous effects. 20 times, by the medium of his prophets, did the Lord attribute to this crime the iniquities of Jerusalem, and the chastisements with which she was overwhelmed. Now Jerusalem, as you know, is the type of nations. Therefore, thus saith the Lord, who hath heard such horrible things as the Virgin of Israel hath done to excess, because she hath forgotten me? Thou hast walked in the way of thy sister Samaria, and I will give her cup into thy hand. Thou shalt drink thy sister's cup, deep and wide, and thou shalt become the scorn of nations. Jeremiah 18:13, 15. Thou shalt be drunk with sorrows, drunk with the cup of grief and sadness, with the cup of thy sister Samaria. Ezekiel 23:31, 35. And thou shalt drink it, and shalt drain it even to the dregs, and thou shalt devour fragments thereof, and thou shalt rend thy breasts, because thou hast forgotten me, and hast cast me off behind thy back. Thou shalt bear thy crime and the chastisement of thy crime. Isaiah 17:11. Could any one characterize with greater energy the fatal consequences of forgetfulness of God? Now the enormity of a crime is measured by the sanctity of the law which it violates. The remembrance of God is, then, the vital law of humanity. On this basis, calculate the importance of the sign of the cross, especially destined to keep alive in man this salutary remembrance. I have said especially, and with reason, the sign of the cross is a vase filled with divine souvenirs. In making it, all those souvenirs are shed even into the very depths of my being. I necessarily remember the Father, I necessarily remember the Son, I necessarily remember the Holy Ghost. I remember the Father as Creator, the Son as Redeemer, the Holy Ghost as Sanctifier. The Father recalls to you, as to me, as to every one who has a mind to understand and a heart to love, all the divine benefits in the order of creation. I exist, and it is to thee, O Father of fathers, that I owe life. Life, the basis of all natural gifts, that life which thou hast given to me in preference to so many millions of possible beings. I owe to thee the conservation of life. Each beating of my heart is a benefit. Thou renewest it every instant of the day and the night. Thou dost continue it during long years, notwithstanding my ingratitude, notwithstanding the bad use that I make of it. Thou dost continue it to me in preference to so many who, born with me, after me, are dead before me. I owe to thee all that preserves, consoles, and beautifies life, and the sun that enlightens me, the air that I breathe, the earth that sustains me, the animals that serve me, the garments that cover me, the remedies that heal me, my parents, my friends, my body with its senses, my soul with its faculties, and all creatures visible and invisible, placed so magnificently at my service. O Father Creator, I owe all to thee. The Son recalls all the divine benefits in the order of redemption. When I pronounce thy name, O adorable Son, it transports me into the splendors of eternity. There I behold thee equal to the Father, seated upon the same throne, happy with an infinite felicity. Then suddenly I descend into a poor stable, before a wretched crib, and there I behold thee, a little infant, deprived of everything, trembling with cold, lying on a little straw, scarcely warmed by the caresses of thy mother, and the breath of two beasts. From the crib I come to the cross. What a spectacle! Thou, O my God, the monarch of worlds, the King of angels and of men, art hanging upon a gibbet, between heaven and earth, in the company of two thieves, thy body torn, thy members pierced, thy head crowned with thorns, thy face defiled with blood and spittle, and all this for love of me. The cross conducts me to the tabernacle. Before my God annihilated, before my God become my bread, before my God become my prisoner, my servant, obedient to my voice, to the voice of a child, before this abridgment of all the miracles of love, my tongue remains mute. The tongues of men and angels are powerless to stammer anything of a mystery which only infinite love could have conceived. The Holy Ghost recalls all the divine benefits in the order of sanctification. Consubstantial love of the Father and the Son, it is to thee the world owes everything. It owes to thee the incarnate Word, its Redeemer. Om conceptus est de Spiritu Sancto. It owes to thee Mary his mother, Spiritus Sane his superveniet in te. It owes to thee the Holy Catholic Church, that other mother, who is for the world and for me what Mary is for Jesus. Credo in Spiritum Sanctum, Sanctum Ecclesiam. Her bowels have borne me, her milk has nourished me, her sacraments strengthen and heal me. To her I owe the communion of saints, that glorious society which places me, a vile creature, in intimate communication with the angelic hierarchies, with all the saints, from Abel down to the last of the elect. To her I owe the preservation of the gospel, that luminous torch which has drawn the human race out of barbarism, and prevents it from returning to it again. Do you know any souvenir so fruitful, so eloquent as the sign of the cross? The philosopher, the politician, the Christian, sometimes ask for books to meditate. Here is one which can take the place of all others. This book, intelligible to all, legible to all, gratuitously given, is within the reach of every one. Such has God made it, and what he has made well. Imitation. To remember God is the first law of our being. You see, dear friend, the importance of this law, and how the sign of the cross helps us to accomplish it. To imitate God is another law no less fundamental. On this point a reasonable mind never entertains the least doubt. Is it not for this, and for this alone, that life has been given to it? What then can be the perfection of a being, if it does not consist in its resemblance to the type on which it has been formed? Is not the picture so much the more perfect, as it better expresses the traits of the model? Man is made to the image of God. To copy trait for trait this divine prototype, to assign to his perfection no other bounds than the perfection of his sublime model, such is the law of his being, and the obligatory labor of his entire life. I have given you the example, said the God-man, that as I myself have done, so you do also, and his great apostle. Be you imitators of me, as I myself am of the incarnate Word. No salvation for those who shall not be found conformed to the divine type. Now nothing is more fit to guide us in this way of imitation than the sign of the cross. What does man do in forming it? He pronounces the name of God, for God is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, three distinct persons in one and the same divinity. By repeating to man the name of God, the sign of the cross places before his eyes his eternal model, the being by excellence, in whom are united all perfections in an infinite degree. Again, in repeating the name of each person of the august Trinity, it proposes to our imitation the particular perfections of each. In the Father, infinite power, and it says to me, you must imitate the power of the Father, creator and moderator of all things, by the government of yourself and the world, by the empire over your passions, over the maxims, customs, interests, fashions, threats, and promises, contrary to the liberty and dignity of a child of God, a king like his Father. In the Son, infinite wisdom, and it says to me, you must imitate the wisdom of the Son by the justness of your appreciations and judgments, by the preference invariably given to the soul over the body, to eternity over time, duty over pleasure, to riches that remain over goods that pass away. In the Holy Ghost, infinite love, and it says to me, you must imitate the charity of the Holy Ghost by regulating and ennobling your affections, by tearing from your heart even the last fibre of egotism, jealousy, hatred, and all the vices which produce degradation within and trouble without. What do you think of it? Is not the sign of the cross an excellent guide? Where is the professor of philosophy who can flatter himself with showing more clearly the way of perfection? Nevertheless, we have learned only one part of its teachings, the others tomorrow. End of Letter 20. Recording by Denise Nordell, Modesto, California.